Oh. So, yes, thank you for coming. This is one of my favorite places in the whole city, so it's really great to be able to come here and bring all my instruments and line them up in a row, because I haven't really seen them all together ever. I don't think I've ever lined them all up quite this way, because I've been always getting different ones, and I've been getting the collection over from America 2 or 3 at a time for the last 4 years. So now they're pretty much all here. I think there's only 3 left in the States. Where I'll start with is just the guitar itself is a stringed instrument, just like, pianos and violins and all the great stringed instruments. Just like music, you look around this room and you've got every style of music imaginable. You've got all the CDs here of jazz and pop and rock and metal and every native domestic kind of style over the years and the decades. And my favorite tower of books over here, where you can just spend a month reading through the lives of so many of my favorite musicians, and so many iconic musicians are written about in this book. So their lives are all written about already, and some of us are still kind of making our way through and hope to write a book someday. But if you look at starting from over there and around the corner, this is kind of my book. It's kind of, if you can stick it out all in one place, that would be my book. Because to me, the guitar has become such a tool to try to find my style and to try to expand what you can do with the guitar. And a lot of musicians have done that. A lot of my favorite idols have done that in their own ways. And I'm going to go back to one of the first guys that I recall starting out as a guitar player, and that's Brian May from Queen. He and his father built their own guitar out of scrap wood, out of wood they found, from a building next door or something, and they cut a big piece and built it in a body and built a neck. And that became part of the sound that defined Brian May, which is really amazing, because you don't think about it that much, and you listen to the old recordings of his, and they sound better than guitar today. They sound amazing. So what they stumbled upon, most likely by mistake, is something that really defined his sound. And then after that, I could say Eddie Van Halen is the guy that would really, and I was going to find a picture of my first guitar, but I didn't have time to dig it out on the iPhoto. Eddie Van Halen was the first guitar player in our genre that built his own instrument out of parts, and then made that into his tool that really defined his style and his playing. So I was speaking with Kimmy earlier about how most of the musicians from the 70s and maybe early 80s, Judas Priest and Kiss and all the big bands, Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin, they all played stock instruments from the factory, or maybe they were customized at the factory. They played really beautiful, fancy Les Pauls, and Ted Nugent had big hollow bodies, and all the guys played pretty factory customized instruments. And it wasn't until Eddie Van Halen that some guy just threw a bunch of parts together. And I think that really hit home with us. We were about 13 or 14 years old when Eddie came out, and we listened to his sound, and we read interviews, and we saw how much of a down-to-earth young guy he really was. He just bought some parts, or somebody gave him some parts, and he put it together, and he made that sound, and he played that way, and he didn't need any fancy instruments, or he didn't have the money to buy them either. So I see the guys arriving in the back. Everybody's welcome to come take a peek at the guitars after I'm done. I'll try not to talk for too long. But back to the subject of what I discovered with Eddie, and my dad helped me a lot. My dad is a civil engineer and always loved to tinker with things, and my stepfather was also a mill worker, so he was good with wood and tools. Is early on, between my parents and going to school where we had wood class, we actually had a woodworking shop, and we had a woodworking class where we had to build things out of wood. That's where I got the idea, hey, let's just try to build a guitar. Let's just try to do this or do that. Let's file something down. Let's cut the shape different in this guitar and then respray it with spray paint. It's a matter of not being scared of it. If I had the money to have expensive guitars, I would not have ever dared to do that. But the guitars I bought that I got early were more manageable, more reasonable. I had an Ovation Breadwinner, which is a weird shark shape, and I had a Copy Stratocaster. And with these early guitars, I wasn't afraid to make an experiment and try something out, put a new pickup in it first, is like your first step, to try to rewire something a little different. And right about then is also when Seymour Duncan and DiMarzio and those companies sprouted up, I think, around Eddie Van Halen, because the market grew. The market kind of was born and grew quickly, that people would want to go buy their own pickups and want to try to put a new pickup in their guitar, or they'd want to put a new volume control that sounds different. Before, everybody didn't dare. So right at that point, we were able to tap into that excitement and that kind of discovery of, yeah, you can go and order something from a magazine and try out a Seymour Duncan X95, and everybody like, oh yeah, it sounds so great. And it was actually pretty easy to replace it if you learned how to solder. So it began a real important era, I think, in guitar, where guitar players could start tweaking their own guitars and start really tweaking their tone, not only with guitars, but with effects and amplifiers. So it was a really exciting time. Now, I'm going to start with my first one here. This is the oldest one. It's not the first one I ever really messed around with, but it's the oldest one that I have over here in Turku. And just to show you, this is a Kramer body underneath. It's a Kramer body that a friend of mine who happened to be working at the Kramer factory in Connecticut was able to sneak out the back door. This guy snuck many bodies and many necks out the back door, and I guess we were lucky or unlucky to be friends with him, because I ended up with like 4 or 5 beautiful Kramer necks that came right from the factory, and he gave me this body. And this is actually fabric from a shirt. I cut a shirt and I glued the fabric right on the body because I liked the design of the funny faces and everything, and it was bright white when I first made it. So the finish that I covered it with has yellowed that much in 30 years. So this was done in 1986 or so. So it was just as white as anything. Is that paper right there. So it's very white, and I like how it turned out yellow. So here we have a Floyd Rose, and this is, I believe, a Chandler neck or something that happened to fit, and I painted Jackson on it myself because I wanted people to think that I had a Jackson. So why not just paint the logo on there? I could, there's plenty of pictures of the logo, so I just took some paint and actually painted it carefully, and people thought I had Jacksons, and they're like, oh, your Jacksons are really nice. I'm like, they're just parts. But what I wanted to talk about this guitar first is scalping the fingerboard is something I discovered maybe about then. And I played a few guitars and I could feel the difference of wrapping your finger around the string. So after I scalped a few guitar necks where you take files and you just carefully do a concave surface between the frets, I really got used to that feel. I guess you can best compare it to power steering as opposed to rack and pinion, like manual steering on a car. That when you have manual steering, you can really feel the road. Power steering, you're kind of disconnected and it's convenient and it's easy. But a scalped fingerboard, your fingers are really around the string. You really get a good grab. And my own style ended up being very left-hand dominated, sort of legato dominated, which means I'm not picking a lot of notes. I'm pretty much, my right hand is pretty lazy and only playing what it needs to play. So with a scalped fingerboard, you get much more really good hold on the string. Your finger doesn't slip off the string, you get really nice vibrato and bends and stuff. So the scalped fingerboard in this guitar is one of the first ones I did, and then after that I've scalped every one of these except the basses, but I won't get too hung up on this. What I wanted to just quickly show is that there was a wire going up the neck, and there was a big unit underneath this plate. That stuff was stolen from this guitar, and it's in the guitar over there, which I'll show you later. And it's just one of the many little features that I've kind of gotten addicted to and sort of tried to incorporate into my live style and my recording style. And it's a sustain device. It's a sustainer that makes the whole guitar shake with the sound that comes from the guitar. So there was an amplifier built in here, and there was a little box on the back of the neck, and you can see where the magnet was. So that was there for a long time. This guitar was played on like the first 2 W.a.s.P records that I recorded with them in 2007 and 2008, I think, or 2009. Then it was kind of retired. But the unit itself, the feedback of the unit, is something that my boss loves the sound of, so he's always would say, get that guitar on, let's get some notes on there. So we put some cool, and we'd record like 30 of them, and then when they went to mix, they could choose the ones they wanted to use on the record. So in a lot of songs, I can hear a little thing in the background and go, oh yeah, that's one of those notes I recorded. So that was this guitar using that unit. Since then, I've gotten a new guitar, so I had to steal the unit and put it in there to use it live, so it's been taken out. But the guitar still works good. It's kind of a skeleton of what it was before. But anyway, just to go back to the beginning, and then I've modified many, many since then. So I'm going to go through a few of them, and I'm going to play a few songs for you. I'm going to play a couple of songs that really show why the instruments have to go in this direction or go in that direction. When I talked about it, trying to expand the sound of what I could do, it not only is with feedback and with maybe effect pedals like everybody can do, or a whammy bar, or other stuff that are found on a lot of guitars. The ones over here with two necks, they are meant to incorporate acoustic guitar into the electric guitar sound. And this one on the stand over here is a 12-string, which incorporates two types of strings, steel string and nylon strings. And I won't be able to demonstrate that electrically, but I'll be able to demonstrate it acoustically. You can hear it. And the basses over there combine a bass string with a guitar string, and you can play both instruments at the same time. So I'll demonstrate them. I just wanted to mention them quick to show you that my own evolution has started with the regular guitar, a regular acoustic guitar like that one back there, or a somewhat standard electric guitar. And just, you find a cool thing you can try, and you just try it, and it ends up working, and you end up trying to incorporate it into your musical style, and then it ends up getting on one of the records, and then you have to do it every night or something. So it's just it's nice to have a place to take some of the ideas and some of the experiments, and maybe they work, maybe they don't. A couple of the guitars have ray guns in them. You'll laugh at some of the things. But all right, so this is just a parts guitar. So from there, I'm going to go to another Strat style guitar, and I'm going to just show you a couple of things on there. How many of you guys play? A lot of guys play here. Good, good. How many of you guys in bands? All right. So I have two reasons actually for modifying and trying to get these guitars to be unique. One is the playability and the musicality, the sound, what I can do, what will come out of the sound. The other is the visual component. Of course, our band is based on a visual component from the start. So a lot of the things that I'll show you were based on how it would look and how it will look to the audience. Even this stupid shirt that's on here, people would remember it. Hey, what's that stupid guitar you have with the faces on it? I'm like, well, it's a cool shirt. But they remembered the guitar because it was a unique graphic. And when I saw the shirt, I'm like, yeah. And I had two of them. I had a turquoise one with the same faces and a white one with the same faces. So it's just something easy to do. It made people remember that's the guy with the Jackson with the faces on it. And they would think that it was a custom one that I paid a bunch of money for. I'm like, yeah, it cost like $3 for that shirt and a can of paint. So that's what I'm saying is, part of it is the musical side, but the other part is trying to get a way that people are going to remember you for something. If you have 4 eyes, they would remember you. That's the guy with 4 eyes. So in the long run, it paid off because I was able to kind of build a little bit of a visibility that people would go, he's the one with the weird guitars, or he's the one with the feedback thing, or the one with the spinning blade. Those things are little things, they're cosmetic, and they're visual, but what's funny is people remember them. They really do. They remember them almost as much as what it sounds like. So that's been part of the influence as well. So the second guitar I'm going to show you is a Washburn N4 from 1992. And when I first got it, it was a boring old black guitar with nothing on it. This one right here. So it's a boring old black guitar. I'm like, what am I going to do to make this thing have a little bit of life? And I was in the Notre Dame Cathedral in Montreal, Canada, up in Quebec, and I was standing there, and sun was coming through this massive church window down onto the floor. And everyone was standing there taking pictures and going, ah, ooh, ah. And I thought, I gotta have that coming out of my guitar. Has anybody seen the X-Files? So the X-Files is filmed in a cool way where a lot of times they have light coming down a tube or out of a tunnel and in this shaft of light. So my real dream was to have a shaft of light coming out of this thing that would go onto the floor. But it was really hard to focus the light, so I had to settle for LEDs. Now, still though, you can see this from the very back of a large arena when we play big shows, and people will remember it. People will say, what's that guitar with the window that lights up? So again, it's something that was fun to do. I found a craftswoman that specialized in stained glass, and she usually did things that hung from the window. And I said, I gotta build this thing for my guitar. It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? So I showed her, I'm like, we're gonna make a church window that's about that big that fits in between the pickups. And she made this beautiful piece about 25 years ago now. And it's wonderful. And I wish I knew where she was. And the batteries are getting weak, so half of the LEDs aren't working. But anyway, there's a lot of LEDs in there. And on stage, on a dark stage, it looks really cool. So that's the visual part. The other part of this guitar is what I just mentioned that was in the back of the white guitar. It's the amplifier in here, the wire comes up the neck, and there's the little speaker transducer, it's called. This guitar I've used for the last 4 records with w.a.s.p on almost every song. So we use it a lot for its sound, and then the feedback thing works good. So I'm going to show you how the feedback thing works. Let's see. So let's see, where's my sound? Any dogs around? They would be running in circles right there. That's a really high note. You can't even hear that note. That's like way above everything. So that's what that sounds like, and we end up really using it a lot in the studio. I don't take this guitar on the road anymore with the band because it's kind of become the studio guitar. But again, it's scalloped, and the sustainer, the switches to control the sustainer here on the bezel. So I can turn it on and off, and you can also switch the polarity, which means the positive, negative to that, and that'll change the notes that it'll create. It's way out of tune. I didn't tune it. So anyway, that's that guitar. We have the battery is on the strap to turn this one on. It doesn't react with the sound at all. I've got a cutoff switch, which are on many of the guitars. Alright, so that's that one. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is probably what I built next. So again, if anybody has any questions about any of these, we can talk about it after, but I want to go through them. This one's from about 1992. And the other feature is this neck joint, which allows you to really get out comfortably. Hi Tommy, how are you doing, sir? So the neck joint is one of the reasons I really play this guitar. It allows you to really get up there. Your thumb doesn't get stuck behind anything. And that's another feature that almost every one of the guitars that I have, I've cut that in. I've actually removed the wood and cut that right in. There's a guitar sitting on the bench here that's almost done for the summer touring, and that has that same cut to get rid of the big heel, because I'm just used to it. So it's really easy to play high notes without that heel in the way. All right, so I'm going to grab the next guitar to show you. And that's that one. All right. All right, continuing on the lines of something that your audience is going to remember. This started out as just a plain old copy Les Paul back in the day. And it was like a 1970s Japanese Les Paul copy. And I ended up changing the headstock to this reverse hockey stick headstock. I scalped the fingerboard, I got rid of the heel. That's the copy of what we just saw on the Washburn. You can reach right up there and play the high notes really high. I put a nice comfortable belly contour in it because it's not an expensive fancy Gibson. If it was really expensive, I'd never do any of this to it. But because it was cheap enough, I wasn't afraid to try out all this stuff. Now here's the other side of the coin about the visual component again. So I put lasers into the bridge, and the lasers point down the strings, and they light up your fingers. So it's just the kind of thing where when we're on stage, you know, it's kind of, we're all fighting for attention from each other, kind of, and we're all trying to do whatever we can to that this ever competitive business that we're in, you know, makes you do to try to get your audience to remember you. So that's a little thing where they're kind of not aimed very well, but they're meant to go on your fingers while you're playing in the dark. And the other thing is a blade that spins around. So this one, I had to oil it. It's not in great shape. But we actually made it so the blade spins around. And I've got two Les Pauls that do that. And this one lives here in Turku, and we're hoping to find a place here in the library to put it on exhibit so people can laugh at it. But it's quite an instrument. I don't play it anymore. Again, I've taken it off the road because I've been fortunate to get an ESP deal and use ESP guitars. But again, the theme of our band is this saw blade. So I realized that a 12-inch saw blade, just by chance, fits perfectly on the top of a Les Paul. And my brother-in-law is a carpenter, so he went down to the barn and he walked back with a real 1950s 12-inch saw blade. And I said, I gotta take that home. So this one is an aluminum one that the machine shop made, and we colored it gold and everything. And it's lighter and it doesn't cut your fingers, it's not very sharp. But you can see it from very far away, and it looks really cool when it's going around. So the first one was a real saw blade with a sharp, I had to make sure I spun it backwards or else it would take your pick or take your finger away. And I had to put that plexiglass guard on there. So again, all this little stuff is kind of like, some other guitarists might go, well, why don't you just practice during all those hours? You'd be a lot better. And why don't you just, record new songs? And why don't you, do this and do that? For some reason, I've really been prone to try to think of things to do to my guitars. And so that's how we end up with this array over here. And again, the music business is pretty competitive and pretty tough. And I'm a firm believer that someone has to have something special and unique, whether it's something like Prince or whoever. So you find your little niche. And my niche has always been, at least to me, to try to really kind of customize my own guitars in my own way that even companies don't want to touch them. They wouldn't, ESP, I wish they'd do a signature model, but they'll do signature models for everybody that doesn't, make them so different, that keeps them more stock. So anyway, this theme of the spinning blade then kind of evolved or devolved or simplified into the idea of just trying to put a plastic pickguard of the same shape onto a Les Paul and have something that worked, without all the machinery. Just to give you 2 seconds worth, this guy, a really great hobby guy, like a remote control airplane guy out in California, I walked into his hobby store and tried to explain what I was going to do with this, and he goes, "Give me a second." And he went and took 3 parts off the wall. A propeller motor, a couple of landing gear wheels, and some other thing, and put it together and said, "This is going to make your blades spin around." And it does, 15 years later still. So it's just, those kind of guys are really fun to meet. The hobby guys and the guitar builder guys, but they all have the same ingenuitive, kind of intuitive thing like, yeah, okay, you want that to spin around? Oh, okay. So there's a little rubber wheel on the bottom of this, and you fit the motor in there, and I can turn it on and it goes. And I can flip the polarity and make it go the other way. So for him, it was a fun little project. For me, it was really, you know, it gave something new for our tour for like 2 years. This was like the new guitar for me, and it, with the lights and all the crap in it. But now to look at it, it's really a step in the direction that I was going. And I hope that Kimmy can find a place for it to hang, maybe out in the foyer out there. All right, so that's that guitar. The only other thing I wanted to show you real quick, it has a 6-way pickup switch. Most of them have a 3-way, like all of those. So this is a really cool pickup switch made by a company in California. You have 6 different choices, like a gear shift on a car. It's like, so again, there's really cool things you can put into your guitars. All right, so the next one I'm going to grab. I know. All right, I'm going to grab the black one. Is a ray gun from a toy ray gun, and that we don't use it in w.a.s.p, but it's just fun. So it has this one. This is the kind of thing where, you know, again, if your band, you know, has some cool, a place where you can put that into your leads, then you do. One of the old guitars that isn't here today has a scream in it, like you push the button and it's a real sample of a scream. And that comes out in a song called Crazy that we've played. But I'm going to play a tune on this now with the video. I'm going to do a tune by a girl that I've been working with. And you'll be able to hear the rear pickup and the front pickup. The front pickup sound is going to sound like this. Where did it go? No? What happened to my sound? Oh, sorry. Here we go. So that's the front pickup through a really strong tone control. And that's another thing that's in all of these guitars now, is I discovered that the front pickup sound is a really cool lead sound. Slash uses it a lot, and if you turn the tone down to 0, it really has a ballsy sound. So the lead in this song, I'll use that sound, and it's just a matter of using the tone only on the front pickup and not turning the tone down for the rear pickup. So let me get this working. Oh, this works over here. Wow, okay. I think. No, I've got to start it again because I forgot to turn the sound up. See, I can't remember everything, Kimmy. I can't remember everything at once. Let's try this again. All right, so we go up to there. Now it's going to work. So that's a song a woman named... She wants to do it again. Well, that's her. Anyway, she's from Philadelphia. Her name is Melissa Van Fleet. And she's a lot like some of the bands that we have in our program that are at the stage where they're looking for labels and they're trying to get interest from producers and they're trying to send their demos around. So what you heard was just a song produced by Lacuna Coil's production team, and I was able to take the guitars off it and play along with it. So she's got 4 songs like that, and hopefully she can get signed. Anyway, that's just a side tangent. It's cool to play along with that track. And that takes us to kind of the end of this stage. I got 2 more, actually 3 more over here that you can check out later. This is the ESP EC series, and it's a really cool Les Paul style guitar, and I love them. I've got 4 now, and they're just unbreakable, and they're better. I mean, I've never had real fancy guitars, so it's great to have beautiful guitars, even though the first thing I do is take them apart and chop them all up, and then they get mad at me and go, we don't be able to see that. So that's what I have to do, though, to make them play how I'm comfortable playing with them. So we've got a blue one, a turquoise one with a red transparent pickguard, blade pickguard. It's just a plastic thing. And then we've got a black one with a red fingerboard and a red blade pickguard, which I call Rosie. This one has a clear plexiglass pickguard, but I put copper tape underneath it, which I've let kind of deteriorate and get really disgusting with sweat and mold and goo. So that's why it's green. And I think I'll try to, ask Kimo what the good stuff is to clean this with to make it all brand new again. No. Maybe I'll do that for the summer. Yeah, but then I can let it deteriorate again. But yeah, so this is a plexiglass one. And again, they're simply just pieces of plastic. And by chance, they happen to fit really well, and to me, they look cool. Maybe other people go, oh God, what did he do then at Les Paul? Jeez, why put blades on it? But to me, that's kind of like people would, they connect our band with the guy with these guitars. That's my intention with these 4 guitars. So the newest one is white, and it's going to have a black pickguard, which is there on the table. You guys can check it out, but be very careful, don't break it. I have to put it on there. So this has those features. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk about double neck guitars, which are the next thing kind of in line here. How many people here play acoustic guitar? All right. So I mean, acoustic guitar is wonderful. Acoustic guitar of any type, whether it's 6-string, 12-string, nylon string, whether it's Resophonic, dobro, and any acoustic beautiful instrument sounds great. So for the longest time I had something like this, but suspended on a drum stand, like a drum cymbal stand, and it kept falling over and getting broken. It was like an Ovation round back, and I had it up on a stand and I plugged it in, and I would be able to walk up to it and play the acoustic parts of the song and then just reach down and play the electric. Now, when they broke that thing 15 times, I thought, there's got to be some other better way to do this. So I had the Washburn N4 already, and if anybody notices, it's a very small body. So I traced that out on a piece of paper, and I traced it out twice, and I cut them out, and I stuck the 2 together. And I kind of looked at it and said, how tiny can I make this thing? How close can I get those 2 necks together? And that's what ended up with this. So this was a cardboard template made out of 2 of the templates of the body of that Washburn, kind of fitted together with the narrowest spacing that I could deal with. I've since made many more, but I widened it out because other people would play it and go, that's too close, I can't play it. So I widened it out a little bit without making the body bigger. But the idea was to keep the body very small. So the body on this guitar is not much bigger than that Telecaster. And it's actually not a whole lot bigger than the Les Paul in width. And the idea is to make it really comfortable to play on stage and to move around with. So we have an acoustic neck on the top, and we have a small chamber underneath the bridge. It's not a lot, but it does give the chance for the strings to dissipate some of their energy into the top. The main problem with acoustic guitars that are solid body is they have too much sustain. They have way too much sustain, so they don't sound as much like a kind of authentic strumming guitar. So this guitar, you can hear it's not very loud. So I'm not getting a lot of the energy into the top, but I'm getting enough into it that it makes a difference. The other ones over here that are on the stand that you can check out later if you want to take a look, the first one has a 12-string acoustic neck on the top. The second one has a 6-string acoustic neck and a cedar top, so it's very loud. It's actually a lot louder than this one, and it sounds very good when you strum it. The acoustic neck is very nice, and the electric neck has single coil pickups like a Strat. And then the last one on the very back is a nylon string acoustic, and Kimmo, who's here today, helped me get that neck together. The neck came out wonderful. We built a neck for it that's wider and flatter at the Ikata School of Guitar Building, and I had never built a neck before. I built the bodies. I built these bodies out of a piece of mahogany, but I always bought the necks. But Kimmo and the guys there helped me build this really beautiful mahogany neck with no truss rod in it, so it's very loud acoustically, and it's very lightweight. It made the whole guitar a lot lighter, made it a lot better, easier to play the acoustic nylon string parts because you need a wider, flatter neck. Unfortunately, I don't have a piece really worked up on that I can play for you, but I'm going to play something on this one that does show the way that the two sounds interact and how I can switch back and forth. So, again, there's these four that you can take a peek at, and then here's an unfinished one over here. The necks are not quite done, but the body's done. So that's, I've built, I think, 14 of these all together. And this is the first one I ever completed, the first prototype. And the 12-string one, the first one on the stand, was the second one. And these are from like the early 90s. But to go back again to the band I'm playing with, I used this guitar at my audition in 1992, and this is what got me into the band, because the record we were auditioning for was half acoustic. So all the other guitar players that came from Los Angeles were walking in, and they were playing the acoustic parts on a clean sound. They were just setting the amp on clean and playing it clean. And that sounds cool. But I walked in and plugged the thing in and got very close to the acoustic sound that was on the record. And that was part of the edge I needed to get in the band. So it's another reason that whatever if you're kind of looking for a way to make your playing unique, there's a lot of ways you can take advantage of gear to help make your playing unique. Does anybody know much about Stevie Ray Vaughan? So what did he do to make that sound? I mean, his playing was in his fingers, but he did some things that made him sound unlike all the other guys that were kind of in his genre down in Texas. And it's kind of overlooked, but when you really look at it, you understand how it made it sound so big. And Kimmel probably knows, he tuned down and used big strings. And he tuned down enough that the strings had a lot of movement over the pickups, and then he was able to use bigger strings because they weren't tight. And he got this monster tone out of the amps that other guys didn't. And that was an approach that most blues guys would never touch. They would never want to go there. But he did it, and it worked with his voice really good. So it's just every one of those guys that you know of, any famous guitar player that you can name right off the tip of your tongue, he's probably got a few bags in his trick bag that may be subtle, they may be overlooked or kind of kept low. But if you look at the Edge or you look at Jimmy Page, they all have they've approached the guitar in a very unique way. Jimmy Page with his double neck and his skinny strings and his automatic tuner and all the cool things that he's done on the acoustic guitar. And Joe Perry with the slide. It's always something that lets their style really come out. And speaking of auto-tuning, I just wanted to show you on this guitar, this is a unit made by a German company, and it lets you change tunings. It lets you go into different tunings. So that's on several of the instruments, because I love Jimmy Page and I love to go into different tunings all the time. So I don't have time to really demonstrate it going into a totally different tuning. But I've got the Bronnior and the Rain Song and Going to California tunings all programmed into that. And when you want to do a performance and you don't want to waste time tuning, it really helps. So let me plug this thing in and get it going. It takes this chord for the acoustic down here, and this cord for the electric. And I need my strap lock, or else the strap is going to fall right off. And if anybody has any questions, shout them right out if you like to. And then I have to plug this in. And I have to test it here. Where is it? Is it that one? 232. All right. Put my thing back. All right, so here's the acoustic sound. The piezo the pickup gives you a pretty good sensitivity to it. I don't have the tone dialed in completely, but if that was a totally solid body, you wouldn't get it. If it was a bigger body, you'd get even more response, like this Takamania. Of course, you'd get much more percussion out of the strumming sound, and you'd get much more kind of a boominess in the bass when you hit it hard. So real acoustic guitars have a real percussive element to it. I'm just gonna switch to this one. So here's the electric guitar sound. So same thing, it's basically the sound that I've been playing off the other guitars. Humbucking pickup, scallop fingerboard, 3 pickups, no 2 pickups, single and double, and 2 outputs. So essentially this is 2 guitars. This is that guitar joined with that guitar back there. And that's how you think about playing it. You think about kind of, I've got a volume pedal down here that lets me turn the acoustic on and off by going sideways. And then I've got the pedal going up and down gives me the electric. So it requires your brain to split it a little bit in half. Anybody play drums? All right. Drummers are really good at that. Drummers have to do that all the time. They've got a right side of their body that does one thing, and they've got a left side of their body that does a completely different thing. And when they get really good, they can actually disconnect the 2 halves, and one half can play in 5/4, and the other half can play in 3/4 or 6/4. So it's just a thing that, again, it's not really difficult, but after I did it for a while, it got really fun because it got easier. So I'm going to play a song now that uses this guitar. It's a song written by a band in this song that I love. So is it loud enough, or can I turn it up more? Is that pretty good? Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll leave it there. All right. Gates are open, you won't leave. Break the silence, you choose to keep. Without knowing, without fear, of where you're going. Now you are here, and when the talk has come to cheap, when life is cut so deep, when the money in your hand hasn't worked out like you. surrender. You needed something to believe. Out of nothing you can receive. It was like if you can see. Tried to hide, left you feeling hurt inside. Surrender, surrender to yourself now, baby. Surrender, surrender to yourself now. Like you can surrender, surrender to yourself now, baby. Surrender, surrender to yourself now. Into open G and open A and all the different keys so you can do your cool slide licks, which I'm not even good at, but it's just another kind of frontier to try to experiment with once that guitar is done, and hopefully at the end of the year that'll be done. All right, so that's Double Neck World. I was just talking about a Telecaster for a second, so the next thing I'm going to show you is the Telecaster over here. I had to bring it because it's totally amazing. This is a Telecaster with a wooden body underneath and a wooden neck, but completely covered with panels of aluminum, custom cut by hand. There's a pair of brothers, these two brothers living right outside of Stockholm, Sweden, and they're from Iran. They actually emigrated from Iran, And they build guitars over there, and they build the most ornate, amazing instruments. And they did not tell me they were building this one. And I went there to work on something else, and they said, oh, we must show you, or you must see this new guitar. So they built this one with the saw blades. Actually, they're not even carved. They're panels that come off one by one. And even the panels on the side are bolted on, little pieces. The back is paneled. And it's got an aluminum fingerboard, which is insane. And it's all carved with the, I'm not sure what, I think that's Arabic writing or Arabic. The company is called Crimson Oath. And they only make like 1 or 2 instruments a year. They do really cool stuff. And I'm really fortunate to have that I could use this guitar. It's not even mine. I didn't buy it. I don't own it, but I use it with the band. And it's a Tele with a Duncan, Invader pickup, and we use it for the first 3 songs of the show, which are pretty basic, straight-ahead rock songs. The white guitar over here is kind of going to replace it for the first part of the show. But I wanted to show you this thing. It's just really one of a kind. It's got a giant baseball bat neck, but it actually is very easy to play and very comfortable to play. And we didn't scallop the whole neck. We only scalloped down to the 10th. We went to the 10th fret. And I'm also only going to scallop to the 10th fret on this new white guitar. The reason is if you're not playing that much lead down in the lower frets, if you scallop it, it's easier to pull those notes a little out of tune. If you're nervous, you're excited. So, for the time being, scalloping more up in the area where you really wail is more effective. So, this one's scalloped to the 10th fret. Alright, so that's that one. That's Crimson Oath Telecaster. And then we're going to go to this one here. And I can't really use the microphone for it, so... Actually, I can, because I've got 2. Alright, so... how many of you play nylon string acoustic guitar? Great. So everybody knows the nylon string is a completely different animal than the steel string. I don't know why. I do know why, and I'll try to explain it quickly. I worked on a song, I demoed a song with an acoustic guitar part, and I couldn't decide what sounded better, a nylon or a steel string guitar for that part. So I recorded a nylon string part, playing it on nylon, and I recorded it on steel. And I thought, I'll just decide later. I'll just listen to it and decide later. Well, I listened to it and I forgot to turn them both off. So they both went at the same time, and I went, it sounded so good. And I said to myself, I gotta have that. And I thought about a 12-string guitar. I'm like, okay, well, you got 12 strings on it, so the other strings are octave strings. Yeah, so what? So I got an Ovation 12-string for cheap somewhere. I got a used one, and I took the octave strings off and put nylon strings on there just to see how it would sound acoustically. And it sounded beautiful. It sounded really nice because you've got the sharp attack of the steel string with the warmth and the bottom of the nylon string. And whether you're strumming or finger picking, it really makes a beautiful sound. And I do have everything all working on that one, but I didn't have time to get something to play for you. So I don't have time to play something for you today. I'll have to just explain what the concept is and why I did it. So here's the deal. The first one was just acoustic. Then I thought, well, okay. Well, what about, how can I get the steel strings to come out one jack and the nylon strings to come out another jack? So I went and I bothered the guys at Ovation. They got so sick of me. I went to the Ovation factory where they built these out of parts from the service department. This guitar is actually built out of a few broken guitars that they just said, oh yeah, we got a neck from that one and we got a body from that one. We'll glue them together. And this guitar became one built out of orphaned parts. Anyway, I said, okay, can we fit 12 pickups in there? And they turned out to have a MIDI pickup, which runs keyboards. It was very, very thin. So we took 2 of them and put them next to each other, and that's what this pickup is in this guitar. So this guitar actually has a separate output for all the nylon string sound, and a separate output for all the steel string sound, and it's pretty amazing. So here's the volume for the steel, and here's the volume for the nylon. It has an XLR jack, just like a mic. It's got one of these. It's got one of these for output instead of 2 cords or something. So, and then I built the tripod stand so you could walk up behind it and play it. Now with all this stuff, I haven't had a chance to play it enough to really develop something on it. So if any of you guys want to develop, a style and record a record with it, you're welcome to. I told that to my hero, Stephen Wilson, but he hasn't let me send it to him yet. But it really is a unique sound that no other acoustic can sound like, of course. You can't really model it. It's so random. When you're plucking upward, you're hitting the nylon string before the steel string. When you're plucking downward or strumming downward, you're hitting the steel string before the nylon. So it ends up being random enough that it sounds just like 2 people playing together, which is really nice and that's the direction I've gone in. All right, so you guys are welcome to check that out later if you want. And I call this Asia. I just named it after an association in Russia called Association of Stringed Instrument Association, something like that. But apparently they made one back in the 70s. And it wasn't electrified. It was just made for classical players. And they were good enough with their right hand to be able to really play the nylon string if they want, or play the steel string if they want. That's where somebody that really was articulate could have a field day with this instrument. So I've got 2 of them. That's the first one I made, which works. This one is totally operational except for the pickup. I don't have a pickup yet for it. The cool thing about this one, it's got a longer neck. Ovation has a certain model that comes with a longer neck. And they were able to put this longer neck on the same body. So it's longer, and that means you can tune a little lower, or you can get a tighter string tension with the same tuning. So it just gives me 2 options to really experiment with open tunings on this guitar. You can see how much it's just a little bit longer than that one, but same exact body. All right, so we've gotten to the final stage here. Have I lost anybody? All right, it all makes sense? So far it makes sense? The main point is just trying to take the guitar somewhere farther. In an industry of very, very conservative temperaments or archetypes or players, you have guys that won't play anything other than a Telecaster, they won't play anything other than the Strat, or they won't play anything other than a Les Paul. So I'm just from another planet, I guess. So it's just about trying to do something that takes it to a different place. This is probably the farthest I've gone with any of them. This is an H-string, 1980s H-string Hamer bass made for a band in the States called Jay Giles. And why the guy asked to have it painted salmon pink, I don't know, because that's got to be the ugliest color any guitar was ever painted in the whole world. Salmon pink. But I got a good deal on it, and it's a short scale bass, meaning it doesn't have a super long neck. And the idea, it was an H string already. I took off the top bass string, the G, and then I put an octave string next to each one of the remaining 3 bass strings, and then I put 2 more guitar strings where the G string was. So you end up with 3 bass strings and 5 guitar strings. Now, since I already talked about that one, now it comes, you can maybe understand the concept of this one a little better. The bass strings have their own pickups and come out their own jack. And the guitar strings have their own pickups and come out their own place. So this essentially is 2 instruments in the same guitar, just like the double neck, but the double neck has 2 necks. This one is 2 instruments sharing the same neck, and this is also 2 instruments sharing the same neck. So I'm going to play one song for you on the first one that I completed. This one is like the second or third one, and if anybody's familiar with Variax, with Line 6 Variax stuff, this is like early modeling sound, meaning in here I can get a banjo and a 12 string, and you can tune to different tunings, but all electrically, all modeled, all digitally. So it's got a USB jack, so you can plug it into your computer, yes! But anyway, you can program what it does even, so it's pretty early technology for that stuff. But for these instruments, it really helps get a better guitar sound. The one I'm going to use over there that I'll play the song for you on does not have modeling circuitry, so you're going to be listening to just piezo pickups going through my amplifier. But anyway, this instrument's allowed me to have a two-piece band, to have what I call a power duo. I grew up on Rush. Anybody like Rush? Yes! Rush is a power trio. Like Cream and Jimi Hendrix and so many good power trios. So the idea was I could play this thing on my own, guitar and bass, and a star drummer. That's what I'm still looking for. It's the star drummer, to be the star, to be like the Buddy Rich half of the power duo. Or I could get Neil Peart, but he retired. But the idea is with two people, you only have two brains, and it's actually very easy to write music, and it's very easy to improvise and go wherever you want. So when I get to play with the drummer with this instrument, it's really a lot of fun. It takes you into a completely different world than any regular guitar. I'm not a bass player, but it's really fun to try to work with the drums as a bassist and as a guitar playing bassist. A real bass player would play this thing very differently, probably better, but he wouldn't be able to look at chords the same way, or he wouldn't be able to look at leads the same way. So this thing combines bass and guitar, and I call it the Guitar Cross. And I've got three of them here. The Hamer is this one, I've got a Kramer, and the last one in the row over there is a Dean, which is a long scale, 35-inch scale, which I tune down to low A, low B, play all that typo negative stuff, yeah. So, just so you can see the evolution, I went from that crazy thing through these other crazy things. These, of course, are all based on music, not visuals. So not, putting saw blades or LED lights or any crazy stuff in it. But, for example, the Telecaster is all visual. That thing looks like $1 million on stage. People can see it from the back, and it just shines like a diamond. It's so amazing how good that looks on stage. But that's about people looking and listening with their eyes. These instruments, the double string instruments, are really trying to figure out a way that a guitarist or a bass player can just go into different territory. Has anybody ever heard of Charlie Hunter in here? There's many Charlie Hunter records in this library. I've found them. Charlie Hunter's an American guy that plays a 7-string instrument now. It used to be 8. And he doesn't double the strings next to each other like I do. So I double and press them down together. He has them laid out and finger picks amazing bass lines and guitar at the same time. And it's not about the niche or the trick, like the novelty of playing bass and guitar at the same time. It's to the point where when you listen to him play with a drummer, they can reach stuff that a separate guitarist, a separate bass player, and a separate drummer have a lot harder time reaching. Again, because you have two brains. So he's a guy that I found out kind of after I developed this thing for my bass player. I actually developed it for my bass player, so he could play some guitar lines behind me. But then I moved away to Boston and realized if I found a drummer, maybe I should try to play this monster. And it's been really fun to play it. So I'm going to grab that one and play a song for you. And then we'll be to the finale, and everybody's welcome to check out all the instruments and ask questions and take a peek at them. But each one has a little bit quirkiness going on, even this one. The reason I brought it is because the best reason for that invention is on an acoustic guitar. So you can really use this as a writing tool. You can put it into whatever tunings you want and sing with it and play with it. And that's why I wanted to show you that they're able to fit this even on this Takamine. And what I'm going to do with this guitar I'm going to play next is exactly the same as what I would do sitting with this guitar if I was just singing a song for you, except for the drummer playing along with me. The best part about this thing is you can treat it like this thing once you get comfortable. It's not a bass and a guitar and your brain is all split trying to do 5 things. It becomes more like sitting with an acoustic and singing a song, and that's part of the real fun of it. All right, let me grab it. Let me grab this one. Yeah. Okay. don't know why I left that there. I can get rid of her. No, she's nice. So, all right. So again, thanks for everybody for coming out on your Tuesday afternoon. And now the sun has come out, and if everybody's wondering how the sounds are, I mean, this is a fractal X effects, which is a really versatile unit. I'm able to switch gears and have patches and sounds for any one of these guitars in the right way. And I'm going to change sounds for this one, and I'll show you the sounds one by one. Before I start the song, first I have to change the mixer. Get back here, Mr. All right, GX Library, there it is. GX Library, then I go to 258, and then I plug the thing in. All right. How many of you guys are using any sort of like digital amplification? Yeah. Are you using a Kemper or a Fractal? Or?
No, all software.
Great. So yeah, you don't even need hardware anymore.
Yeah, you don't have amps also.
So you would be able to build what I'm going to play through here. So amplification has come an amazingly long way since any of this stuff. When I was first making that stuff, we had regular amps, and we could use an AB box to switch between more than one amp if we wanted. And now it's amazing. So this thing, mind the little keyboard that doesn't work anymore. But we have bass, if I can find it, if I can get the bass. So, I mean, what I'm going to play doesn't have a really super complicated bass going on in it. So you can hear, this is how much of the guitar string can bleed through. That bleeds a little bit, not much. Okay, here's the guitar. That's with the clean sound. Dirty sound. Here's dirty and clean. Here's with super fuzz. I've got several weird effects. So, taking advantage of how powerful that unit is really helpful for this guitar. But I could go and plug it into a regular one little guitar amp or one little bass amp together and get what I need to get out of it. But this does add to kind of what I can do musically. So I'm going to play a song with some singing, and it's called Out, and it uses my drummer from Boston, John, and it'll give you an idea of just how, if there was a drummer here, what it is to play kind of with a two-piece. And this is, again, called the Guitar Cross. I've got my little, where did it go? Got a cutoff button on there. And again, it's a work in progress, and every time we write something, I kind of learn a new way to play this instrument. So again, I'm still stuck to playing regular guitar with w.a.s.p most of the year, and with the Rock Academy doing most of my clinics on regular guitar stuff. But the twisted, demented side wants to keep developing this side of the equation to try to let young guys see that there's kind of options to go other than just down one narrow little route. And that's where this one. Let me find my track. So we go one down, yes, one down. All right, here we go. Nope, that's not it. We want this one. All right, here we go. off the floor, the floor around you. Take this soul of mine, wishing I never found you. And I wake up to climb down and feel strange the lies around you. Take me out of my hell. Wake me out of my shell. Wake me, I will not down. Wake me. Watch my head go gray as I walk the streets without you. And the lights in my face deep enough. Don't let go. Take me out of my hell. Wake me out of my shell. Wake me, I will not tell. Wake me, what is myself? All right, well, I think that, oh, that's the wrong one, sorry. I think that gets me to my, yeah. This computer's just like to go on their own. All right, so thank you very much for coming. That was the guitar cross thing, just a real small example of what I could do with it. A lot of the songs that we do with the drummer are instrumental, but a lot of them are fun to do with vocals. And a lot of them I actually write on the acoustic and figure out a way to move them and play them on 5 strings, which isn't that hard because most of the good stuff is on the bottom 5 strings anyway, sometimes even the bottom 4 strings. So that's where this instrument kind of has a connection to just writing songs on the acoustic. It also is fun to get with a drummer and play technical stuff like single note stuff like Zeppelin and everything, but it's a pretty versatile instrument. So again, any questions you have, come up and take a peek at all of them, and really thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Jimmy, thank you very much. This is a great environment. I hope many more people come and speak for you here. I think John is coming in May, right? What day is his?
3rd, I think.
So yeah, John Richardson's going to come in and talk about his career, I believe, and songwriting and record releasing. Yeah. So that's going to be a really interesting one. Again, usually I'm not focusing on just the instruments, I'm talking about other aspects of the business, but it's been really fun to show you some of these, and thank you for your attention, and have a great night, and come on up and check them out if you like. more often, which will be great. It will be great.